welcome to our Veterans Day tribute. I'm Ray Olson, Mayor of Tullahoma. As I look out over the gathering today, I'm blessed to realize that I'm living in the greatest nation, the greatest state, and the wonderful small town in the world. And we thank you every day for that blessing that we have. So now I want to welcome veterans. I want to welcome all the loved ones of veterans, the Blue Star families, the Gold Star mothers and students and friends. So welcome. Today, our schools have developed a new and creative way to express our gratitude to veterans. Our annual Veterans Day tribute train. If you didn't see the tribute train, I'll tell you that it went by City Hall this morning about 8:30, leaving from the high school, going around to all schools, so the veterans can be recognized by students. It's a wonderful tradition that we have started here in Tullahoma. Remember, we started that during COVID days when we couldn't meet as we normally do. So that practice continued today as the train left the station early this morning. Consisted of a colony of veterans and their vehicles passing through by each school, where each student could express their appreciation to the service for our veterans. What a wonderful example that they are setting for us. Today we're blessed to have this opportunity to gather again here in South Jackson and recognize and commemorate the significance of November 11th, Veterans Day. As our nation sets aside a day to honor all of our veterans, both living and deceased. This American is extremely grateful for their service, and because of their willingness to serve and their sacrifice, we can enjoy the freedoms and blessings that we have today. So Americans must never forget their sacrifices and choose to honor them. Those in uniform today and those who have served in the past. So we honor you today and every day. To our veterans, I want to say personally thank you on behalf of a grateful nation and a grateful nation. John Fitzgerald Kennedy said, as we appreciate your gratitude, we must never forget that the greatest expression of appreciation is not just by words, but to live by them. So today, veterans, you don't have that problem to wonder what you've done to contribute to our nation's freedom. They live it every day. They know they've made a positive difference in the world. Veterans, we thank you. Yes. So now I would like to ask Boy Scout Troop number 402 post the colors. Please post the colors.
Before our invocation, I would ask to just share briefly with you about one very important veteran from our community. And I would commend him to your personal prayers. 46 hours ago, I was at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown Hospital in Nashville to see Mr. Claude Morse. Many of you know Claude. He is a veteran. He is in critical condition. Claude has been very instrumental over the years to see to the honors flight for many Tennessee veterans. And Claude has also been involved in many years for the national recognition of wreaths across America. I had the privilege to be with him 2 days ago, and also his wife, Bobby. Also in the room on that visit was General Mike Wiedemer, former AEDC commander. And so in our prayers this day, we lift Claude Morse also in our prayers. Please bow your heads. O Lord God, we commend to you one of your very own this day in Claude. We thank you for his service to our veterans throughout Middle Tennessee as he engaged them in an honors flight to Washington, D.C., and also as he, over the years, spearheaded wreaths across America. We commend him, O Lord, to you at this time, along with his wife, Bobby, and ask that you would assure them both that you will never leave them. We also turn to you in this hour, mindful of the men and women who have served and who continue to serve this great nation through our armed forces. For the unsung heroes of our nation who have risked and even given their lives for us and for the cause of freedom, we praise you for their courage and their unwavering commitment in service. For our veterans gathered here today, for our veterans who are lonely, who are displaced in our world today, for those in a VA, in a hospital, a nursing home, tend to them as you have promised, assuring them that you are their good shepherd and great physician, and that you will never leave them nor forsake them. For those who continue to serve, we give thanks to you. Bless the men and women who serve within our borders and who are scattered throughout the world. For those, O Lord, who have lost a loved one, a father, a son, a daughter, a mother, that you would bind up the brokenhearted with your comfort, with your peace, and with your strength, and give to each one of us here, gathered here today, renewed strength that we may serve you and serve our neighbor as ourselves, as never before. We ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ, your only Son, our Savior. Amen.
Good morning. On behalf of two women's organizations here in Tullahoma, I want to thank and honor all our veterans and their families. The Tullahoma chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, and the General Federation of Women's Clubs, Centennial Women's Club of Tullahoma, both are very, very grateful to our veterans, and we support them, and they have our great thanks. So I would like to read a poem written by a veteran, Yusef Kamanyaka. Thanks for the tree between me and a sniper's bullet. I don't know what made the grass sway seconds before the Vietcong raised his soundless rifle. Some voice always followed, telling me which foot to put down first. Thanks for deflecting the ricochet against that energy of dusk. I was back in San Francisco, wrapped up in a woman's wild colors, causing some dark words love call to be shattered by daylight when my hands reached up and pulled a branch away from my face. Thanks for the vague white flower that pointed to the cleaning metal, reflecting how it is to be broken, like the mist over the grass, as we played some deadly game for blind gods. What made me spot the monarch writhing on its single thread tied to a farmer's gate, holding the day together like an unfingered guitar string is beyond me. Maybe the hills grew weary and leaned a little in the heat. Again, thanks for the dud hand grenade tossed at my feet outside July. I'm still falling through its silence. I don't know why the intrepid sun touched the bayonet, but I know that something stood among the lost trees and moved only when I moved. Thank you.
Mayor Lois, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, veterans. North America was very different during the time of our first veterans. Only about 10% of the population lived in cities compared to 85% today. Philadelphia was by far the largest city with 46,000 inhabitants. Both number 2, New York, and Boston, number 3, were smaller than Tullahoma is today. And they were all under the rule of King James of England. The United States was founded in part because by the mid-1700s, the British government in North America became more and more oppressive and restrictive. Laws and taxation without representation led to colonial rebellion. They desired not independence, but equality with the British subjects in England. So the British Army was sent to Boston to force compliance and control. The Revolutionary War began when British General Thomas Gage ordered 700 British regulars to march from Boston to Lexington. Their mission was to arrest colonial leaders, Samuel Adams and John Hancock, and then proceed to Lexington to confiscate the gunpowder stored there. Due to the efforts of well-placed spies, these orders were very well known to the colonials. Paul Revere, Dr. Prescott, and others implemented a carefully planned mission to alert the Minutemen. In the early morning hours of April 1775, the British troops departed Boston. When they reached Lexington, just after dawn, they encountered 77 colonial Minutemen, standing shoulder to shoulder. The British outnumbered them almost 10 to 1. I cannot imagine the courage that it took to stand in the open and face such a force. They were less than 70 yards apart when the British commander ordered, "Disperse, you rebels." But before they could, a single shot was fired. by an unknown person. A volley of fire from the British regulars immediately followed. 2 Minutemen in the line fell dead. Ensign Robert Monroe and Private Jonas Parker fell dead immediately. One officer, one enlisted man. Before the skirmish was over, 6 more Minutemen were killed, one on the doorstep of his own home. The British regulars failed in to find Adams and Hancock. They continued on to Concord. When they reached Concord about noon, they discovered that they were now outnumbered. Since the first alert that morning, Minutemen had continued to arrive from all directions. In the battle that followed, the British Army was stopped, turned back, and began a retreat toward Boston. Their mission was a complete failure. In the summer of 1776, representatives from the 13 colonies met and drafted a formal document declaring and justifying the separation from Great Britain. We do not know its original contents. We do not know how many changes may have been made. We have no complete written account of their debates or compromises, if any. But we know exactly what they wrote and exactly what they approved as the Declaration of Independence. That may have been the first time in history that one people voted to be free of another. And one of the most beautiful and profound sentences ever written in the English language is the second sentence of that document. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as important as that document was, it did not create a new nation. It did not give a single person life, liberty, nor the pursuit of happiness. That would be accomplished by the sacrifice, service, and valor of the Minutemen, local militia, and later the Continental Army and Navy. The veterans of the battles of Lexington and Concord and the Revolutionary War were our first generation of veterans. They overcame enormous difficulties, endured extreme hardships, fought with great courage and determination to defeat the most powerful army on the planet. By winning our independence, they made possible the creation of a new nation, which eventually guaranteed those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all of its citizens. Those of us who have served as part of an unbroken lineage of veterans from the Minutemen of 1775 to the present, we have never failed our country. Veterans, stand tall, be proud. We are only a small percentage of the population, but we have made a significant contribution to the greatest nation on earth. May God bless and keep the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Very good. Armed Forces Medal. Over here, over there, we have hit the dusty ground, and the army goes rolling along. In and out, in and out, round and round, you all about. The army goes rolling along. You
Sergeant Ellis. I'm here to do the introduction for Colonel Gordon. Just want to say right up front, if anyone has a Coast Guard joke, I'll take those later outside. I know most of them, but every now and then I hear a new one. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Colonel Randall Glass Gordon is commander of the Arnold Engineering Design Complex, headquartered at Arnold Air Force Base in Tennessee. The complex employs more than 3,000 people and comprises more than 68 aerospace test facilities across 8 states, with facilities at Arnold Air Force Base in Middle Tennessee and operating locations in California, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, New Mexico, Ohio, and Utah. The complex offers a suite of test capabilities to simulate speed, temperature, pressure, and other parameters over a wide range to meet the needs of aerospace systems developers. The test facilities simulate flight from subsonic to hypersonic speeds at altitudes from sea level to space. Colonel Gordon was born in Poughkeepsie, City, New York, and received his commission in 1998 from the United States Air Force Academy. Prior to this assignment, he was the initial cadre director for the Secretary of the Air Force's Artificial Intelligence Accelerator with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He also served as the initial cadre for the Secretary of Air Force's AFWorks Technology Innovation Team with private sector business and academia. Colonel Gordon is a Presidential Fellow, Harvard Business School alum, Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency Fellow, MIT Fellow, and holds a doctorate from the U.S. Air Force's School of Advanced Air and Space Studies. He served as the F-22 Combined Test Force as its commander, and has additional test pilot experience in the F-15C and E, A-10A and C, F-16A and C, Bombardier BD-700 Global Express business jet, and 70 other military and civilian aircraft. His most recent assignment was as the 412th Test Wing Vice Commander. I just want to add a couple other notes. He is a combat veteran. He served in Operations Northern Watch over Iraq, in Enduring Freedom over Afghanistan, and received decorations in honor of that service. And trying to learn a little bit more about Colonel Gordon, doing a little bit of research, there were a couple things that really struck me. One with regards to AEDC. This is a quote from the Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall. "Make no mistake, we are in a race for technological superiority with China, and AEDC is a key component to hone our edge in that race. The AEDC mission is to prove the superiority of systems required to meet the demands of the National Defense Strategy." So, some very serious obligations and responsibilities. And then a quote from Colonel Gordon. "Because we're operating in new regimes where the adversary is moving so quickly, that if we don't do it, they certainly will. And if they get a strategic advantage against us, then all the things that America protects go into jeopardy. I didn't join the military to lose. I joined because I wanted to be on a winning team that was always standing for something bigger and larger than itself." And then lastly, I'll just have another quote from Colonel Gordon about people. "At the end of the day, what people are looking for is solid leadership and someone who cares and wants to promote them and for them to be a part of the mission." I now introduce Colonel Randall Gordon.
Well, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing this morning? You know, I'm pretty sure last year it was raining outside too. I remember that because I was late. I had the wrong schedule on my little thing that told me where to be and when to be, and so I showed up right as things were kicking off, and so I'm actually surprised you guys invited me back. I thought for sure, right, that you would tell me, wow, what a terrible guy, Colonel, and you can't even keep time. So thank you for that. Lloyd, I also have to say thank you. I waited a whole year to see if you would include Space Force. And you did. Thank you so much for that. And by the way, that was just a beautiful rendition. Yeah, Space Force last year had just rolled out their anthem, like literally just a couple of weeks beforehand, and so it was going to be too soon to be able to include it here, but thank you for including that as well. So beautifully, beautifully sung. And again, thank you for inviting me back, Mayor. Thank you for bringing me back. I had a couple of thoughts for Veterans Day for this time around. I wanted to share them with you because, quite frankly, you guys learned a little bit about me last year. I've never been to Tennessee my whole life. I arrived here, and I feel like this is my home. This is my family, and so when they told me, hey, this is happening again, I definitely wanted to come back out and spend some time with y'all. Also because you have Chick-fil-A on the back end of this as well. So that's always a good thing to end up, in terms of having a good time together. About a week ago, I got a chance to be a part of a celebration of life for one of the members of our AEDC team that had passed away. And it really was that. It was a celebration of life. It was so encouraging, so uplifting to be there and hear the story of one of our members, Mr. Rutland. He had flown A-7s off of aircraft carriers, a United States Navy vet. And the part that I'll always remember about his celebration of life was the flag holding ceremony at the end. By a show of hands, how many of you have seen that before? Should be a lot of folks in this room have seen a flag holding. I've seen it a lot, and as many times as I see it, I still get chills up and down my spine. And it's not about feeling sorry for the death of someone that we lost. It's more about this continuity that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves in that American flag. And in this particular case, I had seen it a lot of times in the U.S. Air Force. I had never seen the way the Navy does it, but it was beautiful. Every detail so choreographed, so precise. And the part that still shakes me up a little bit is I was sitting close enough to the family that once they had completed folding that flag and they handed it to the grieving family, the words that came out of the Navy corpsmen were, on behalf of a grateful nation and a proud United States Navy, they added. We thank you for your service, and they gave her the flag, and it was beautiful. My wife sitting right next to me, she was in tears. Again, not from sadness, but just from gratitude of what it meant to serve. And so I looked and I said, even though we served in two different services, we served the same flag, and we served the same ideals all the way through that. I just thought it was just a beautiful, beautiful kind of entry into this season of the year where we start thinking about things and we're grateful for those things. We have all heard folks say, thank you for your service. I've said that many times to other folks, and when we mean it from heart, and we're saying it as a means of saying true gratitude. For me, though, I've always looked and I've said, hey, the American flag, service to our country, it's given me purpose and vision. So it never really felt like service to me, like service in the same way you serve mowing your yard or taking out the trash and all these menial kind of activities that we do where we're trying to serve. This to me has always been like a calling. It's been a purpose and a mission. And so to be amongst all of you today, again, I feel like I'm amongst brotherhood and sisterhood, that we have served something larger than ourselves. And that flag holding, to me, was very endemic of what that kind of looked like. So that was the first thought, and I just wanted to kind of bring it across to y'all. The second thing I wanted to say is typically right around Veterans Day weekend, I do what a lot of other folks do, which is I sit on the couch and I watch old movies about veteran things. And one of my favorites of all times is Strategic Air Command, starring Jimmy Stewart from 1955. And I love watching that movie over and over and over again. For folks that haven't seen it for a while, or maybe have never seen it, Jimmy Stewart, incidentally, a combat veteran himself, served in World War II, flew B-24s, and ultimately retired out as a brigadier general in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. So you couldn't have picked a better actor to actually play the character in the movie. In the movie, he is a baseball player. He is a World War II vet, flew B-29s, and decided to start a career as a baseball player, only then to find out that his nation needs him again. And they bring him back to go fly, I think, one of the coolest airplanes ever made, the B-36 Peacemaker. This thing was filmed on what was then Carswell Air Force Base. Now it's a Fort Worth Reserve Base, just on the outskirts of Dallas. And the B-36 is, I've only seen one in the Air Force Museum. I've never actually seen one fly, unfortunately, but just in the museum itself, it is an impressive beast of an airplane. 6 turbine engines and 4 additional jet engines on the side, carries a nuclear payload, and all these kind of guns that fold out of the airplane to provide some type of self-defense. And so Jimmy Stewart gets called back to fly this airplane, and the movie kind of takes you through a little bit of what that was like for his family to kind of weigh do we give up baseball, do we go back to serve, but then also kind of understanding there's this larger purpose of how they serve, right, in the defense of the nation. And then at the end of the movie, he transitions over to the new jet engine bomber, the B-47. And I love that movie really for 2 things. One is there's no computer generation in that movie whatsoever. They didn't have it in 1955, so if you see an airplane flying, it's actually flying. And it's gorgeous, right? It's really, really neat. The other thing I really love about that movie is it kind of makes me feel a little bit of kind of where we are nowadays, because as much as I enjoyed watching that movie and still do, I can't help but think the audience for that movie was the Soviet Union at the time. Because there were multiple spots in the movie where Jimmy's character is walking through the B-36 and he's talking to the navigator and he's talking to the bombardier and the pilots, and they're kind of laying out these messages about, hey, this means you, Russia, right? Stay within your bounds, because if you get out of touch on that, you're going to have an entire fleet of these types of airplanes flying over the top of your country. So I look at it as a little bit of propaganda, but also part of this larger narrative of how do we deter the bad guys, right? So that we still keep 24 more hours of peace on the globe. And so I look at that, and it kind of ties me a little bit to the heritage of the U.S. Air Force, but then it also ties me a lot to the heritage of what it means to serve in the U.S. military. For all of our veterans that are in the audience that come from the other services, it kind of ties all that together. So here's why that's important, right? This is why I told you a little bit of that story, so that I can tell you this story. A number of things have happened since the last time we were all together last year. Not the least of which is a surveillance balloon that flew over top of our country from China, in which I can only say that that was probably the most brazen act of a nation state against the homeland of our very country. And that was terrifying, but at the same time invigorating, I think, because I think it told people this is a real legit issue. China may be the place where you buy all your things on Amazon, but it's also the place that has a very different view of what the world should look like. Right? So that was the very first thing I think that happened that was pretty significant, that I thought about a little bit in prepping for Veterans Day. The next one is the ongoing continuing war that happens between Ukraine and Russia. And I make no distinction about that, about what that means for a nation that is in decline, and what we see with Russia. When the Soviet Union fell, we saw that they were a bit of a paper tiger, that their bark was a lot worse than their bite. But that also meant that that nation was in a period of desperation. And when you listen to the words of Vladimir Putin himself, he says the worst geostrategic thing that ever happened was the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's in his mind. Right? He did that as a KGB agent in Germany at the time and watched that fall of the Berlin Wall and figured in his world, his entire worldview was collapsing. So now the fact that he is in charge makes me really nervous, because I look and I go, this is an aggrieved man with a tremendous amount of power and no checks and balances on that power. That entire Russian state is the opposite of the United States. Here, our political leadership exists with the consent of the governed. And in the Russian system, the people exist to serve Putin. And so that's why you see a military completely unhinged and the bombing of civilians, or a whole series of different atrocities that are unthinkable to me as an American airman. But you see that with respect to the Russians. And that goes on day in, day out. And it breaks my heart every time I turn on the television and see that. And then layered on top of that is what's going on with respect to Israel now. And the attacks that we all saw on October 7th. And to me, that's sort of like the equivalent for the Israelis of sort of like what 9/11 was for us. And you can imagine how you felt on September 12th of 2001. So, you can imagine how the Israelis feel on the back end of that. But I watch that conflict and I go, that's very, very dangerous conflict, because of all the different powder kegs that happen within that region and the ties that happen to other nations that are around there that have real impact. And, oh, by the way, U.S. military personnel, be it carrier strike groups in the Mediterranean, or if it's airmen that are conducting strikes in Syria, right, based on attacks that have happened against us, whether or not that's cyber issues that are happening, and that's occurs with a lot of different services, a number of different things where U.S. personnel are actively engaged on that. And so I look at all these hotspots that are happening in the world, and I think this is a very, very dangerous time. Very dangerous time. And when I look at that, I go, well, what's the defense of that? And it's our servicemen and women, and the families that support them, and the civilians that work with them, all to be able to produce something that is designed to deter these types of conflicts from getting worse, and in the event they actually do get worse, to be able to end them as quick as we possibly can. That's the only humane way with which to end war. And I can speak to that, and several other folks can speak to that just because we've been to war, and we know what that feels like and what that looks like. So for all those reasons, I look around and I go, for Veterans Day, I go, this is the time where we celebrate who we are, what we have done to serve our nation, our flag, and the fact that we have meetings like this all together. I look and I go, this is what makes America great, frankly. This is why I love Tullahoma so much, because we do these types of things. We take moments out to be together and to think about these things and to celebrate those sorts of things. But especially now, just given how dangerous the world has become, all of those things mean more and more and more to all of us, really, because this isn't some hypothetical thing. You turn on CNN or Fox News or whatever you listen to or whatever you watch, and you see it every day. And so in a certain sense, although I would never say I'm grateful for any of those things, in a certain sense I say as a military commander, I want to use those things. I want to use those things to invigorate people, to inspire folks as to why the service to our nation is so important. The fact that there are nations around the world that do not believe in freedom and democracy in the way that we do. And if given the chance, they view this time as their time to be able to create their worldview. They look at the United States, frankly, from the outside looking in. They look at us in the same way that perhaps we looked at, say, the Roman Empire at one time, or the British Empire at one time. In other words, it was powerful, and now that power wanes, and now it's their time to come onto the stage. And so long as we're serving, we're not going to let that happen. Period. So I really, really am grateful to be in this room with y'all. As was mentioned earlier, so few of us actually serve. Some of y'all might remember what we were talking about last time, where I told you I got a chance to hear Tom Brokaw talk about the greatest generation and describe how we are nowadays, where less than 1% of us serve. And I thought about what he told me, and it never ever left my mind, because it talks about just how elite this group is and what we are a part of. The last thing I'll give you, because I know this is something that's weighing on my heart as well, one of the other kind of major things that have happened, is there's a sense that our military has gotten weak. And again, you see that in a lot of different news venues. It's kind of in the culture, those things that come across. I've received some questions about, hey, is the U.S. military woke, right? I've heard that term many, many times. I'm speaking on behalf of AEDC, but I can also say this is true of the U.S. military and all the different venues that I've been a part of. And I've seen things from the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, all the way down. That's kind of what you get a chance to do when you serve the men and women of AEDC as a commander. You get a chance to kind of listen to how our senior leadership talks about these sorts of things. And here's what I've observed, and I believe this every day. When I drive to work every day on Wattendorf, and we come in through the gate, I tell myself this, and I make it a point to tell the men and women that serve at AEDC, you are not driving to work. You are arriving for a calling. Our nation needs you. There is only one Arnold. There is no other Arnold anywhere within the free world, period, dot. And in that scenario, there's two things that we focus on, period, dot. We focus on how are we developing our leaders of character, because the nation needs that. It doesn't matter if they're continuing to serve in the military, if they go on beyond that, we need leaders, ethical, moral, leaders of character. And the second thing is, everything we're developing, is it lethal? And that might sound a little bit of a strong word, but it's intentionally given. Because if we're not scary to the adversary, then we are inviting aggression from people that don't have the same values and beliefs that we do. So everything we build at AEDC is designed solely for the purpose of scaring the adversary. And there are some things that we put on the table to let them know, kind of like what Jimmy Stewart did when he made that movie about Strategic Air Command and they filmed the inside of a B-36, mainly to give an audience to Russia to say, knock it off. And there are some things that we keep up our sleeve so that we don't talk about that, so that we leave the adversary guessing and wondering. And if that's true, then we keep peace. And that's what we're really all about. So thank you for having me here. I am so honored to be here. Thanks again for inviting us, and happy Veterans Day.
they give me a microphone with no restraint. Can you imagine that?
I have a mute button, John.
You know, one of the things that the Colonel said was, we are the only truly one of the few free nations in the world. They cannot defeat us from outside. The only way they can defeat us is from the inside. Making a footprint inside of this nation with the things that they say and the things that we do to each other. We live in the land of the free because of the brave that fought for our rights, many to their grave. Freedom of speech is the law of the land, so when I voice my opinion, I hope you understand. You can disagree with me. It's your choice to do. But don't hate me for my words, because I will refuse to hate you. Please hear the sermon that I'm trying to preach. We all have the right to freedom of speech. We're neighbors. We're friends. We can disagree with each other. That's what's so beautiful about this nation. But we can't hate each other because we have a different opinion. That's the only way that we can be taken, if we allow it ourselves. The names of the veterans who have passed this year, the best we have of what we could get from our funeral homes. The ones who have allowed us and fought and laid down their lives where we can have freedom of speech. Troy Mann, John DeLong, John Anderson Jr., Warren Owens, William Tate, Lee Erickson, Charles Seward, Harold Nelson Jr., Michael McGregor, Wayne Castleman, Edith Gammon, Travis Bynum, Glenn Castile, Harold Liner Jr., Richard Hopwood, Harry Goldstein, Ralph Martini, Michael Martin, Lynn Carroll, Clayton White Jr., Billy Richard Tips, Dr. Tulio Figueroa, Thomas Qualls, Virgil Klein Jr., Frank Passarello, Philip Antwerp II, Richard Pendergraft, Jack Giddens Jr., Randall Cox, Ken Jordan, Gary Priestler, Rivard Turner, Teresa Galapos, Brian Mears, Benjamin Binkley, Eddie Weiser, Joe Hill, Thomas Judge, Jim Sale, Danny Sampson, Dwayne Thorpe, Robert Winton, Rex Moulter, Troy Bailey Sr., Howard Temple, Donald Townsley, James Blaylock, Andrew Wood, James Fox, Jackie Thomas, Donald Rounds, Jack Moore, Lee Trail, Randall Street, Kenneth Reese, Edward Knott, Jack Hardy, Carly Dodson, Thomas Corrington, Joseph Gurnett, Randy Paplin. At this time, I usually sing an old Doc Watson song called Faithful Soldier. Done it for years, and that's what's in the program. It's my mic. Tom Corrington, a dear friend of mine in this community, passed away recently, and I was given an opportunity to sing a song at his funeral. I've been looking for a song like Faithful Soldier, and this happens to be it. Dr. Ralph Stanley did this song, and I hope I do it honor. I looked into the face of an old soldier of God. I thought his race has ended, his life's crown he'd won, separated for the present, but soon to live again. He's only gone away with a friend, gone away with a friend, someone closer than a brother, someone who loves you more than children, dad or mother. He holds you very close in the palm of his hand. Let it read on my tombstone, gone away with a friend. Now he's my constant companion through life's joy and life's pain. All my hopes and my cares I hold in his dear name. And when my soul breathes free from the tie that binds me here, I'm going away with Jesus, no greater friend so dear. Gone away with a friend, someone closer than a brother, someone who loves you more than children, dad or mother. He holds you very close in the palm of his hand. Let it read on my tombstone, gone away with a friend.
Earlier this morning, I mentioned tribute train. Well, there was one school that didn't get to honor our veterans with their, when they passed by. It was our preschoolers. So the preschoolers came here, and they presented their posters this morning. And thank you, preschoolers, for that. We want to give you a... Those are great posters. So thanks to all that contributed to our program this morning. It certainly was a meaningful program to me, and I know to all of our veterans. So thank you, especially Colonel Gordon. Thank you, all of our participants. Someone said some of our younger veterans don't appreciate being appreciated the way some of our older veterans do, but we have some older veterans here today, and I want to say thank you to all of our veterans. Your service is appreciated. And in recognition of that, we're at the close of the program today. Lunch will be provided to all of our veterans across the hall here, so please enjoy. On a separate note now, tomorrow on Veterans Day, at 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow, our city's Parks and Rec Department will be hosting this is kind of a fall fling, if you will. It's called a Fall Festival in honor of our veterans. We're going to have food trucks and live music from 2 to 5 at Fraser McEwen Park. So please take advantage of that tomorrow. This has been a great program today. Thank you for attending, but that concludes today's program. Have an excellent day.